Hello, my name's Ted Pavlic. I'm faculty in school sustainability, also in engineering, complex adaptive systems, and life sciences. So I go sort of all over the place here. This is my first time teaching systems thinking, but systems thinking is something that's very close to my heart. I have taught 212, which is a very closely related course, system dynamics and sustainability. How many people are in 212? Okay, a couple of people are in now. Any chance anybody's taken 212? So this will be a very complementary class to 212. So you'll see some of the same things. 212 will focus a little bit on systems thinking and then kind of go into more simulation. Here, we don't talk about simulation, but we focus sort of entirely on systems thinking, conceptual tools, and so on. There's also going to be some slight overlap with a few other types of courses, like say 325, the economics of sustainability, a little bit of the game theory and things like that. So you'll see some of those things again. So this is meant to kind of provide some fundamental conceptual frameworks that are not quantitative. You're not going to be asked to use any particular mathematical tools or computational tools, but they are abstract. And so it's meant to familiarize yourself with some structures, some abstractions that are meant to sort of make sense of a complex world. And that's really kind of what we'll get into in this systems thinking. But before we do that, I want to get through some of this administrative stuff. So there is a very sparse but growing Canvas site at the moment. Just wanted to sort of feature or show a couple of the things that I want to make sure that you know are there. So for one, I am recording right now. So I don't plan on doing, because this is sort of still kind of a new class to me and I haven't got my bearings, I don't plan on doing a live, allowing people to connect remotely live, but I will post recordings afterward. So those should be there. And I will post those links to the Canvas page right here on the front of the page here. So under this captured classroom recordings, that's where you'll find shortly after every lecture. I'll go ahead and post things there. Likewise, the course syllabus, which I'll go over some of the details on, is linked right from the front here. So most of the things you'll need are sort of linked right from the front. The course will be primarily organized under modules. What I would recommend is that the first time you go into modules, especially as this starts to grow, all of these modules will be expanded and it will be a little cluttered. So I recommend sort of hitting the collapse all up in the top right. And because I'll try to group things sometimes redundantly. So there's going to be, like right now we just have unit A, but all of the units that we'll be talking about will be sort of under here. Some of the items that are in here may also show up in additional modules so that if you're looking for a particular assignment, you may not have to hunt through the unit for it. You'll be able to find it sort of in an additional spot as well. So because of that, it can get a little confusing if everything's expanded. So if you haven't ever noticed the collapse all in the top right, I definitely recommend taking a look at it. So this is where anything about the course should be under modules under a particular module. Like I said, it's pretty sparse now, but things will be growing this week and further on. So like I said, there's the syllabus, which we'll get to here. I've put a tentative schedule. So it's kind of a quick calendar of what I'm planning on us covering each day this semester. If you want to sort of get an idea of where we'll be. So that's there. But I'll also make sure that to anything I can put a due date on so they show up on the Canvas calendar as well. But if you're still just looking for like sort of a high level view of what's going on, then that can be found right there in that course information module up at the top. Otherwise, For those who may ask later, sometimes in this course or in courses like this, I'll have students ask about honors contracts. I put sort of a stub information page there, and I will add example honors contract type projects that will be in there, but right now the information that's in there is valid. So if you're interested in honors contracts anytime throughout the semester, go ahead and take a look at that first. And then once you've read through that, if you're still interested, then contact me and we can set that up. I'll put some sort of Canvas tips in this sort of tech support thing. The textbooks, I sent an email about this. You'll need access to really, I don't really use the Meadows textbook for required readings, but I do sort of borrow some things from it. So it's a very useful reference to have. I just don't quite like it as a driving textbook. So that's why none of our readings are explicitly out of Meadows. You'll need access to these, but I've provided them here in electronic form. They're also available from the library in electronic form. Any chapters that we read out of these, I'll link to. So if you're okay with the electronic version, there's no reason to get a hard copy of these. But these are the ones that if you were to go to the ASU bookstore, it will list as being recommended for this course, but you don't have to get the paper version. The electronic versions are totally fine. They're searchable, they're good quality, and they're already provided here and in the library. The library is like lib.asu.edu. So they're actually physical copies are in the library, but electronic copies, you can read them online in the library. And again, the PDFs are available here. If you like the EPUB versions for, I think, at least the Mitchell text, an EPUB is also available in the library. So electronic versions of the textbook, so you shouldn't have to purchase any additional resources for the course unless you'd like them for convenience. Otherwise, like I said, I'll put classroom recordings in the classroom recordings module, and then I'll go over the different types of assignments here, but I'll have assignment groups that kind of pop up underneath here, as well as the units. And so right now I've only got our first intro unit, but all the other topic units will be under here. And each one of those will be organized by the activities that we do in those units, the readings, and so on. So if we're in unit B and you're looking for something, everything you could sort of need should be under there if you can't find it anywhere else. So anything you need in the course should be able to find under modules. If that's not really working for you, I've tried to also make assignments as navigatable as I can. So all of the different groups of the assignments, and I'll go over this on the syllabus here in a second here, but all of the different types of assignments, their drop policy, their weightings for the course, all listed there. If you click that show by type, I think in the student view, it often defaults by show by date. If you do that, it'll organize by due date, which is fine. But if you're looking for a particular type of assignment, that show by type can be useful. And it also reveals, again, this kind of syllabus type information. So all that's going to be organized under assignments. And so where we find everything on Canvas, and that's pretty much it. The Slack I will use. So usually when I send an announcement, I'll also send an @channel on Slack, just for those that maybe don't get the Canvas notifications or prefer that. For contacting me, and I'll go over this in the syllabus, if you would like to DM me on Slack as opposed to sending me a Canvas message or an email, that's totally fine. So you can use really any communication modality that's linked from here, the discussions, the Slack, the messages, whatever you would like in order to get in contact with me. The class is a little too small to have a TA, so I'm your only point of contact. So that's pretty much it. So any questions on where to find things? That's just a Canvas site. We've got a lot of practice at this. Sorry that we're way out over here in the brickyard. It wasn't in my, it's not up to me, just where they put us. It's an unfortunate location, but if you're a few minutes late or something like that, again, anything we do in class, I'll record and put online, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. All right, so let's get into course policies, then talk a little bit of technical shop. And then we'll probably have a shorter class today and get into our first reading discussion on Thursday. So let me switch chairs here. Okay. All right, so basic course policy stuff. And it's been a while since I've taught in this room. So the next, when we do this on Thursday, I'll have some of this extra window garbage gone here, a different way to share. But just needed a warm up for this room. So apologies for that. But so yeah, like I said, it's 220. It's systems thinking. So we'll talk about what that means here in a little bit. It's, you can read kind of the description here, but like I said, it'll complement 212, another required course for the BS in sustainability. So you'll see a lot of overlap with that, and I encourage you to make use of that overlap. And so when you're introduced to system archetypes over there, feel free to ask questions about them here and vice versa. Like I said, their courses are really sort of meant to complement each other. This one's the more abstract, kind of conceptual side, whereas 212 is the little more concrete implementation side. We're actually doing sort of simulations. And then I also think there's some complements with some other courses like 325, a little more advanced, things like that. The prereqs, again, I'm not expecting you to know a lot of math or anything coming into here. I really just sort, a 4.8, we just want you to have taken sustainable cities and sustainable world. So I want you to be familiar with sustainability problems and the way humans interact with the environment. And that's kind of all we need is sort of some background, some conceptual background for the conceptual frameworks that we're going to use to help us think differently about those interactions in this course. So even though it's going to feel kind of mathy, so sometimes we'll use some graphs, sometimes we'll be drawing some funny shapes, and but there's no real calculus that we'll be using. There's no real algebra. We won't be solving for anything. But there's definitely a hint of math behind the scenes. So these frameworks are supposed to set you up so that if you do have to do some more quantitative modeling in the future, this will sort of be motivational to drive where that kind of comes from. So that's why it's going to feel kind of mathy, but as I start drawing little graphs and things like that, and we start discussing that and reading about these things, don't worry if you don't feel like your math strengths aren't really as high as they could be right now, because that's not where this course is going. 212 is a little bit, more on the kind of math and computational side, but we lay out those things. 220, it's very much conceptual. It's abstract, but it's conceptual. Like I said, my name's Ted Pavlic. I'm in sustainability. I'm in a bunch of different schools here. My office is actually behind a door that you need Isaac access to get into. And so I only will do office hours over Zoom unless, there's a really, an in-person need, then we can make an appointment to like go to the union or something like that. Right now, my office hours, I haven't set a formal office hour. So if you need something, at least until I set one, by appointment is fine. So just feel free to send me a note and say, I'd like to really, have trouble with this particular thing. Can you help me with that? It's totally fine to do. If you do send me a note, and I'll mention this earlier, try to put SOS 220 in the subject. I get a lot of different emails about a lot of different things, but I like to prioritize the students, and I've got filters that will do that. If you don't put 220 in the subject somewhere, then it's very possible for especially if you've never emailed me before, for your mail maybe to get lost or put in a different bin. So, so just to make sure that I can see your note, try to put 220 in the subject of your mail somewhere, or just again, you can send me a direct message on Slack that usually will notify me pretty well. Send me a Canvas message, that'll hit me. So, those are totally fine as well. So participation, like I mentioned, at least for now, this is an in-person class. So I'm going to do as much recording as I can. I'll do my best to keep things anonymous for anyone that's in class, because I want you to participate. But I also want to have that archive so that if you do miss things or want to go back and rewatch things, then it'll be available. So recording them for asynchronous access, but any participation scores or whatever will be taken during the classroom. So like I said, electronic versions of the textbooks are available. I've provided them. They're on the library as well. We'll also be reading a few articles that I've picked out from the academic literature, and a few articles from this great website, the Systems Thinker. And so those are easy to get access to too. I've put those articles on Canvas, but if you need access to the sources, they're easy to get to as well. And then I've mentioned kind of honors contracts. Okay, so before I go into the details of how the course is structured, any questions about any of that or concerns? Okay. All right, so like I said, this is a systems thinking course. So I've kind of arranged it in a number of different small units that are probably about a week. I think the longest unit's probably 2 weeks, so they're in between a week and a half long, where in every unit, we usually read one reading that's like maybe between 20 and 30 small pages. And then we discuss that reading and add to it. So that's generally how things are structured throughout. So we'll start out with a general intro to systems thinking. We'll start talking about resilience and defining things like resilience, adaptability, transformability. Then we'll talk about systems archetypes and traps, which if you're taking 212, you should probably see some overlap with that. We'll finally get into complexity, chaos, which we'll finally sort of give a slightly more formal definition of chaos and where it comes up in systems. Then we'll get further into the complexity literature, defining information. We'll actually talk a little bit about thermodynamics and how it's important for systems thinking. Then we'll get into resilience, and that's about where we'll have the midterm. So if you go back to on Canvas, that calendar that I showed under course information, you can see where I've placed the midterm. I'll talk about this in a second, but the midterm and final exam in this course are 2-stage exams. How many people have ever had experience with a 2-stage exam? Nobody here. So a lot of times when I've had students who've had them, they've been like in high school. So we'll talk about it, but basically you get the same exam twice, but one is an individual exam, the other one is a group exam, and your score will be a mixture of your 2 scores on that. So, again, I'll get to that here in a second. After the midterm, we've got a couple other units. We're going to add in living systems, a little bit of game theory and computation, network science, expose you to some social networks and the different tools that they use there. And then finally close with some comments about design. How do we build resilient systems in the future? So thinking about the future. And I'll talk about this in a second here, but along with your participation across these units and the midterm and the final exam, there also will be an individual, what I'm going to call a creative project, which is very open-ended on what you can submit. And I'll get to that here in a second. But those projects will be submitted basically to your peers to evaluate and to view, and peer reviews, as well as my own reviews, will go into how those are scored. So rather, you're not going to actually present them in class. You're going to upload some digital presentation of whatever this creative project was. They'll be evaluated online from the comfort of your home. So you won't have to watch everybody. You'll have to only watch a couple. And then from there, that way everybody at least knows that their project was seen by some, but you don't have to see all, and we don't have to burn a class for that. And that's what allows me to do 2-stage exams for both the midterm and the final. So that's the basic topic structure of where we're going. Let's get into some details about how the grades are set up here. So the class, like I said, there is class participation. So what we're going to do, not today, but really starting tomorrow, is that at random points in the class, I'll ask a question or two, maybe three, and I'll provide a QR code on the screen with a little short URL that and that if you don't have a digital device available, you'll be able to answer on a sheet of paper you can hand me at the end of class. But most students will just use their cell phones or a laptop they have available to log into what is basically a Google form where you'll put a couple of answers in as I ask them, and then you'll submit them. And what I'll do is review those for coherence, not correctness. And so if I asked something that required a numerical answer and you gave me a numerical answer, then I'll say, okay, then they were there that time. And so that's how I'll kind of keep track of attendance. And it also helps me survey kind of how well things are going and how well the concepts are hitting. So it gives me a quick spot check of how well things are landing. And it also gives you an opportunity to have that. Now, I want you, for all of these categories, I want you to try to notice the drop policy here. So I dropped 5 of these attendance things. And so there's roughly 30 classes, 15 weeks times 2 days. But 4 of those classes are burned for a midterm and final exam. There's going to be some other things that we do that might cause us to not have attendance in certain days. So, so that's a significant chunk of those are going to be automatically dropped. And so, if there's times you just can't make it to class or whatever, that's fine. And it's only 5 to all the rest of them only contribute to 5% of your grade. And so, attendance is something that I want to give you an opportunity to score points for attending and participating, but I don't want you to feel like it's this onerous obligation. If you have to miss, that's fine. We all have things that happen. So there's the other 5%. I was going to go into what I call these weekly muddiest point discussions. And so on Canvas, every week at the end of the week, so these aren't tied to units, there's basically going to be a discussion assignment that will open the minute the Thursday class ends, and it will be open until Sunday. And it's just a discussion thread that will open, and you'll have to post 3 posts or more, but at a minimum 3 posts. One of them, which either asks a question or tells me what you think was the most difficult concept that week. So even if you said you understood everything, you can still sort them and say, but this was the most difficult. The second one, tell me something that you thought was the most interesting thing from that week or the thing that relates the most to sustainability. And the third post will be a response to someone else's post that adds something constructive. And so maybe it answers a question, maybe it asks a new question. Simply agreeing with another one is considered a constructive post. So I'll review all of those, and then you'll see all your peers' posts as well. And as long as you post it, hits those, and you'll get that credit. So those weekly muddiest points are pretty much free credit, and not looking for correctness. We're just looking for people thinking about the week's content, and the lowest 2 are automatically dropped. Any questions on either of those, the class participation or the muddiest points? Does that make sense? All right, and then the other things is that I said we've got all of these things organized as units. We don't have homework assignments, a lot of homework assignments. This isn't like a math class, and I'm not going to make you write papers as well. But I do want you keeping up with the material and practicing. So at the end of every unit, we'll have 1, maybe 2 of what I'm calling unit comprehension assignments that are on Canvas. Generally, except for maybe 1, will be automatically graded. And they're meant to sort of say, from that unit, here are a couple of questions that if you understood the unit, I think you should be able to hit these questions. And those will be examples of the types of questions that I will ask on a midterm and a final exam eventually there. So you can think of those as sort of early practice for the upcoming midterm for each individual unit. And those, I don't want that to be a major burden. Back when I was in your position, I took classes on undergrad, and we just had a midterm and a final, and that was our whole grade. And so now it's a little bit more modern to give you opportunities. So that's what I'm going to try to do, is provide you opportunities for extra credit, for additional credit, not extra credit. But I'm going to drop the lowest 5, which is a large chunk of them, because I know some of you just maybe won't need it. So for those of you who feel like you need the extra practice, be there. You don't, there's a good chunk of them that we drop. Yeah. I think there's like, if I go back, it goes through unit J. So, that's less than half the alphabet. So, whatever, I don't like to do math and for people, but we'll say on the order of 10 to 12, something like that. Yeah. All right, and then the other major contributions, that's a good 20% of your grade, is just keeping up with those. Then the other activities, like this is a reading component. You're supposed to be learning how to critically read these chapters and these articles in this class. So there are going to be before every lecture day that is associated with a reading, a discussion day associated with a reading, and you're expected the night before to read that reading and complete perusal exercise. How many people have used perusal in your other classes? All right, so a little bit more than how many people are in 212. So perusal is a tool connected to Canvas that I will load every reading into, and you can read the reading through perusal. And as you're reading, you can make annotations. You can ask questions. You can answer questions that I've posed. You can respond to questions or comments that other students have made. What perusal basically does is it will give you a score from, I think, 1, 2, or 3, and it basically gives you a lot of opportunity to get a 3 in different sorts of ways. And so if you read the entire article that was assigned, you'll get some fraction of that. If you add a couple of comments, you'll get some fraction of that. For most people, they go well over what is necessary to get their 3. So occasionally, if someone just maybe read the article, doesn't interact at all, they might get a 2 or a 1. But it uses an algorithm to kind of figure out, like, is this a worthwhile comment? Is this a really worthwhile comment? Or is this like an extraordinary comment? And that kind of adds to it too. So perusal is figuring out that give you credit for how you're interacting with the document. Every time you return to the document, you get little extra points, and so on and so forth. And so I used perusal. I was not really sure what to expect the first time I did it, but every semester since I've used perusal, I've been really impressed with the interactions between students with the text. And so I'm really impressed by it. And so I'm going to stick with it. So you'll do perusal, you'll read the right alongside that, if you will. You can open up, I'll have a Canvas exercise where I ask you maybe 3, 4 questions that are just meant to be guiding questions to sort of say, I want to make sure you hit these points in the reading. So look for these answers, those sorts of things. And again, it's not a timed assignment or anything like that. You can have it up right next to the reading. You can only submit it once, but you can, but again, it's not timed, and I'll have all the questions shown. So you can just sort of there as helping you sort of read with that. So that's hope to sort of get you kind of motivated to come to class prepared with those readings. And that's kind of the bulk of the sort of, points you get throughout the semester. The other major component, which is kind of more thing towards the end, is what I'm calling a creative project. So this is not a paper, it can be a, not necessarily, and these things are described, by the way, in detail underneath this in the syllabus. So here's the creative project information, which is down here. But more information to this, get a little bit closer. But basically, what I decided to do in this class is, again, I didn't want to read a bunch of papers that, especially when students didn't want to write those papers, but I wanted to give the students the option to write a paper, but also the option to do something else. And so I said, I don't really care whether you're writing or using some other media. I want you to demonstrate mastery of a couple of topics from the class. you look at the class and you say, I really think this adaptive cycle is interesting, or something that we've talked about. You pick out a couple of those, and then you say, I'm going to create a creative project, which maybe it'll be maybe it'll be a story, maybe it'll be a paper, maybe it'll be something that I've knitted, maybe it'll be something that I've put together as a model, maybe it'll be a diorama, and it could be, it's very open-ended. It can't be a lecture. It can't. You can use PowerPoint to create it if you want to use that as a tool to help you build some of the media that you're using, but it can't just be a video of a lecture about the topic, but it's got to be something that helps show that you've synthesized material. Maybe you've gone out and done what I'm going to call a systems blitz, where you've gone out and you've taken a photo of a bunch of different systems that you found around the world, and then underneath each one of them, you've diagrammed out the feedback loops that are in each one of those, and you've created kind of a little catalog of 6 or 7 different systems that demonstrate different archetypes that we've talked about, those sorts of things. So it's really open-ended, and I can talk more in detail with it as we go on. But that's sort of my way of giving you an opportunity to demonstrate your mastery beyond what you get on the midterm and a final exam. To help prepare for that, sometime about a week or two after the midterm, I'll ask you to submit a short proposal to sort of say, right now, this is what I'm planning to do. I was really interested in this topic. I'm planning on doing this general idea, and here's how I'm going to do that. And I'll review those and see if there's any red flags or whatever. Then a few weeks later, I'll ask you to submit an even shorter status update, which is just basically says, I'm sticking to the plan, or you can say, this proposal is non-binding. You might have said, I tried that, but I actually get really more excited about this other topic, where I realized it wasn't really feasible for me to do that, so I decided to do this other thing. So you just give me an update, tell me how you're doing in that status update there. And then those things are, again, very short assignments. And then I leave you alone. And then the Wednesday of the last week of regularly scheduled class, you'll upload some digital version that can be consumed on Canvas that represents your project. So you might have built something, and you can't upload something that you built, but perhaps you can give me a couple of images of it and a description of what's going on. Or maybe you can give me a video where you pan around it and show me those sorts of things. It has to be something that I and your other peers will be able to then watch through Canvas to see what you did for this creative project. And then after you submit that, from Wednesday to Saturday of that last week of classes, you'll be randomly assigned a couple of other students, and you'll then get an opportunity to use Canvas's peer reviews system to look at their presentation of their project. And there'll be a rubric that I'll provide to you that you can fill out a numerical score and provide a constructive comment about what you thought about the creative project there. And I will then go through everyone's peer reviews, and I'll give you credit if you did those things, gave both a numerical score and a constructive comment. And then that's how you'll get this extra peer evaluation here. For your actual score for the project, that will be a combination of my review of your project and sort of an aggregate of what everyone else who reviewed your project thought, so that everyone else, so kind of adds some skin in the game, where everyone's opinion kind of does have some meaning or have some weight. So that's how this project is roughly going to go. Are there any questions about that or any of the other assignments here? And all this I will remind you of and give more details of probably about a week or two after the midterm is where we'll really start worrying about this. Yeah. Yes, like I mentioned, so like if the on Canvas, that little, if you go to the course information, that little tentative schedule, it actually has the proposal due date and the status update due date and the submission due date. But all the assignments created, I will make sure to use all the Canvas due dates, so that on the home page at the very bottom, you'll see all due dates listed there. If you go to assignments, will be listed there. And if you go to the Canvas calendar, all the due dates will be listed there. They're not in coming through this course over the last couple of weeks, picking out readings. So I just haven't had the time to canvas there.